What if the biggest peace deal of the decade was agreed behind closed doors, and nobody outside the room was allowed to know what was actually in it? That is the situation we are in right now. A war just ended, a deal has been announced, and the world is being asked to trust it without being shown it. Think about that for a second. The stakes could not be higher. The Middle East is watching, allies are watching, Iran is watching, and yet the details are locked away somewhere, shared more freely by Tehran than by Washington. Before we go any deeper into this, if you care about what is actually happening in global politics right now, not the spin, not the headlines, but the real substance underneath, hit that like button and subscribe. Share this with someone who thinks they already understand this story, because I promise you, there is a lot more going on here than most people realize. Let us start from the beginning, because context matters enormously here. For months, the United States has been engaged in a conflict with Iran. Bombs dropped, generals killed, supreme leaders taken out. The Iranian Revolutionary Guard, one of the most feared and ideologically extreme military forces on the planet, was struck repeatedly. The Strait of Hormuz, one of the most important shipping routes in the entire world, was blocked. Global oil prices spiked, supply chains trembled, and the world held its breath. Then, suddenly a ceasefire, then, even more suddenly, a deal. And President Trump stepped in front of cameras to say this was going to bring peace to the world, peace to Iran, peace to the entire region. Now, nobody is saying peace is a bad thing. Of course it is not. Peace is everything. If a real, durable, verified peace deal has been struck, that is one of the most significant diplomatic achievements in modern history. But here is the problem. A claim of peace and actual peace are two very different things. One is a press release. The other is a framework, built on verified commitments, shared openly, debated seriously, and backed by something stronger than goodwill. And right now, what the world has is somewhere closer to the press release. Even Lindsey Graham, one of the most hawkish Republicans in the United States Senate, a man who rarely finds fault with military or foreign policy action when it comes to Iran, even he came out and said something that should stop everyone in their tracks. He said it is very hard to support a deal when everything you know about that deal is coming from Iran. Read that again. The information vacuum is so severe that one of Trump's most loyal allies in Congress is learning the terms of an American diplomatic agreement from the Iranian side. That is not a normal situation. That is a red flag. And it raises the central question of this entire moment. If this deal is as strong as President Trump says it is, why is it still hidden? If the terms are favorable to the United States, to Israel, to America's allies across the region, then transparency would only strengthen the case. Show the deal. Put it on the table. Let the world's foreign policy experts, the allies who depend on American leadership, and the American people themselves actually evaluate it. If it is good, it will hold up to scrutiny. If it cannot survive scrutiny, that tells you something important. Joe Scarborough put it simply and powerfully. He said it directly. If this is going to bring peace to the world, then show it to the world. And that challenge has not been met. Now let us talk about what we do know, because even the fragments that have emerged are raising serious questions. First, the nuclear issue. This is supposedly the core concern that has defined American and Israeli policy toward Iran for decades. The nuclear program, the enrichment facilities, the question of whether Iran is or ever will be capable of building a nuclear weapon. Trump himself made this his central justification for engaging with Iran militarily. He said repeatedly that he would never allow Iran to become a nuclear power. So what does this deal say about the nuclear program? What are the verified limits? What are the inspection mechanisms? What are the consequences if Iran violates those limits? The answer, as far as the public knows, is unclear. There is no confirmed framework. No details shared publicly from the American side. No timeline. No verification structure. And that absence is not a small thing. That absence is the entire point. Because if you go to war to stop a nuclear program, and you come out of that war without a clear, verifiable public agreement on that nuclear program, then what exactly did the war accomplish? Second, the Strait of Hormuz. This is the waterway through which roughly 20% of the world's oil supply flows. When Iran blocked it, the economic consequences were felt everywhere. Shipping costs exploded. Energy prices climbed. Every country in the world that depends on that route, which is most of them, felt the pressure. So one part of this deal appears to involve reopening the strait. And that is genuinely significant. Getting that waterway open again matters for the global economy. There seems to be some consensus, even among critics, that this piece of the deal may be real and may hold, at least in the short term. But here's where it gets complicated. Reopening a shipping lane is not a peace agreement. It is a temporary measure. It answers an immediate crisis. It does not address what comes next. It does not resolve the nuclear question. It does not change the ideology of the Revolutionary Guard. It does not alter the decades of grievance and tension that created this conflict in the first place. It buys time. And buying time is only valuable if you use that time wisely. Third, and this is a number that has genuinely alarmed serious analysts on both sides of the political aisle, there is talk of a $300 billion reconstruction fund for Iran. $300 billion. The idea being floated is that as Iran complies with the terms of the deal, whatever those terms turn out to be, the United States would help fund the rebuilding of Iran's economy and infrastructure. Now, the theory behind this is not completely unreasonable. The logic of economic integration as a path to political moderation has been tried before. The idea that if Iran has more to lose economically, it becomes a more reliable partner has some historical precedent. But the scale of what is being discussed here is breathtaking. And the conditions attached to that money, if there are firm conditions at all, have not been clearly explained. $300 billion is not development aid. That is a geopolitical transformation fund. And committing to something that large, without public debate, without congressional input, without transparent terms, is an extraordinary thing. Jared Kushner, who has been involved in the behind-the-scenes negotiations, apparently made a comment along the lines of, "If you want a Rolls-Royce deal, you have to pay a Rolls-Royce price." It is a memorable line, but it also raises an obvious follow-up question. Who decides what counts as a Rolls-Royce deal? And who is actually verifying that what we are paying for is what we are getting? Now, if you have made it this far into this video and you are finding this valuable, do something for me. Screenshot this video right now and post it to your Instagram story or your WhatsApp status. Not because I am asking for a favor, but because this conversation deserves a wider audience. The people around you deserve to understand what is actually being negotiated in their name. Share it, let them decide what they think. Now let us get to the part of the story that almost nobody in mainstream coverage is giving enough attention to. The psychological and historical dimension of what is happening inside Iran right now. Both President Trump and Vice President J.D. Vance have made a very specific argument in recent days. They have suggested that the Iranians, specifically the leadership, have essentially seen the light. That after months of military strikes, after losing generals and supreme leaders, after watching their air defenses crumble and their proxies weakened, Iran's leadership has come to a rational conclusion. They have changed. They understand now. They are ready to be partners. J.D. Vance, in one television appearance, came very close to suggesting that Iran's Revolutionary Guard leadership was on a path to becoming reasonable, moderate actors on the world stage. He stopped just short of saying they had experienced a full ideological conversion, but the implication was clear. And this is where serious analysts, including people who have spent decades studying Iran, studying the Revolutionary Guard, studying the psychology of revolutionary movements, are raising the loudest alarms. Let us think about this carefully. When something devastating happens to a deeply ideological movement, what typically follows is not surrender. What typically follows is hardening. When a country or a people experience what they perceive as an attack on their identity, their leadership, their sovereignty, the psychological response is almost never, "Well, I guess we were wrong." The response is almost always, "We must resist. We must remember. We must never forget." Think about how Americans process national trauma. After September 11th, the national response was not to question American foreign policy. It was to say never again, to double down, to build memorials, to commit to never forgetting, to respond with overwhelming force and deep lasting resolve. And that was in response to a single catastrophic event. Now imagine a movement that has been in ideological conflict with American power for more than 40 years. A movement that traces its identity directly to the 1953 overthrow of Iranian Prime Minister Mossadegh, when the CIA helped remove a democratically elected leader and reinstall a monarch who served Western interests. A movement whose formative narrative includes the years of American support for the Shah of Iran, a ruler who used brutal security forces against his own people. A movement that has built its entire legitimacy around the idea of resistance to American imperialism. That movement just watched America kill its supreme leader, destroy significant portions of its military infrastructure, and then come to the table asking for a deal. And the American response has been to say, great, they have seen the errors of their ways. That is not analysis. That is wishful thinking. And it is dangerous wishful thinking because it shapes how a deal is structured. If you believe the other side has truly changed, you negotiate differently than if you believe they are strategically retreating while preserving their core capabilities and ideology. If you believe they have moderated, you ask for less. You give more. You structure fewer verification mechanisms because you trust the partner. The people now running Iran, the most ideologically hardened members of the Revolutionary Guard, who rose to leadership precisely because others were killed, are not looking at this moment and thinking about peace. They are thinking about survival. They are thinking about preservation. They are thinking about their revolutionary mission, which, it is important to remember, includes the explicit goal of removing American influence from the region and ensuring the destruction of Israel. These are not fringe positions within their movement. These are foundational commitments, and no amount of bombing, as terrible and devastating as it was, has ever caused a revolutionary movement to abandon its foundational commitments. What it sometimes does is force that movement to adapt its tactics, to go underground, to appear compliant while rebuilding, to buy time. And this brings us back to the central tension of this entire story. Is this deal a genuine turning point in Middle Eastern history, or is it a tactical pause by an Iranian leadership that is wounded but not broken, buying time under the cover of American optimism? The honest answer is that nobody fully knows. And that uncertainty is not a sign of weakness. It is actually a sign of clear-eyed analysis. David Ignatius, one of the most respected foreign policy journalists working today, put it well when he noted that within Iranian leadership, there is a range of people with different experiences and different aspirations. Not everyone inside the Iranian government thinks identically. There are pragmatists, there are hardliners, there are people who see economic integration with the world as Iran's best path forward, and there are people who see that same integration as a threat to the revolution's purity. The question is, which faction has genuine power? And the honest answer, again, is that we do not fully know, because the deal and its terms have not been shared publicly. What we do know is this: Iran's regional allies and adversaries are watching every word. Israel, which was on the verge of participating in military operations against a specific faction of the Revolutionary Guard before being reportedly sidelined from that operation, is watching. The UAE, Saudi Arabia, Jordan, every country in that region that has built its foreign policy around American reliability and American strength is watching. And what they are seeing when they hear the American president call the most radical faction of the Revolutionary Guard rational, and when they hear the vice president imply that these same people have changed their worldview, is not reassurance. It is confusion. It is concern. And in some capitals, it is something closer to alarm. And because if America is willing to describe its most dangerous regional adversary as rational and changed in order to sell a deal that has not been publicly verified, what does that say about American judgment? What does it say about the reliability of American commitments? What does it tell every other country in the region that has structured its security around the belief that America will not blink? There is also a broader pattern here worth acknowledging. Throughout this conflict, Iran has been, by most accounts, the stronger negotiating presence. Not militarily. America's military power is obviously greater. But in terms of resolve, in terms of willingness to hold positions, in terms of refusing to back down under pressure, Iran has consistently pushed back. They have said no. They have rejected terms. They have set conditions. And at each stage, the American posture has appeared to accommodate rather than demand. That is not inherently wrong. Diplomacy requires flexibility. But there is a difference between strategic flexibility and being pushed into a corner and calling it a concession you chose to make. And the concern among serious foreign policy observers is that the $300 billion reconstruction offer, combined with the absence of clear nuclear limits, combined with the rushed timeline, combined with the secrecy around the terms, suggests that America negotiated from a position of urgency rather than strength. Trump's negotiators, to their credit, were handed a genuinely difficult situation. The war was not going the way it was hoped. The Strait of Hormuz was closed. The economic pressure on global markets was mounting. The timeline for reopening that waterway was not unlimited, so they were working under real constraints. And the people criticizing the deal, even the sharpest critics, acknowledged that getting the strait reopened is something. But something is not a comprehensive peace. Something is not a verified nuclear agreement. Something is not a demonstrated transformation of Iranian foreign policy. Something is a start. And a start should be described honestly as a start. The best possible version of what is happening is this. A temporary agreement has been reached that reduces immediate tensions, reopens a critical global waterway, and creates a foundation for a longer negotiation in which Iran, seeing genuine economic benefits from cooperation, gradually moves toward the international community in ways that make permanent peace possible. That is the hopeful version, and it is not impossible. The more cautious version is this. Iran has agreed to a temporary arrangement that relieves the immediate military and economic pressure it was under, gives it breathing room to rebuild and reorganize, while receiving a reconstruction fund worth hundreds of billions of dollars with verification mechanisms that are unclear and enforcement tools that are undefined. And the most radical members of its leadership are now being called rational and changed by American officials, which tells Iran's allies in the region that American resolve has a price. And Iran now knows what that price is. Neither version can be confirmed right now, because the deal has not been shown. And that is the single most important point in this entire conversation. The deal needs to be shown. Not selectively, not in pieces that happen to make one side look good. Not summarized in press releases or interpreted through political spin. Shown, in full, with the actual terms, with the verification framework, with the consequences for non-compliance, with the timeline, with the specific nuclear commitments. Because that is how trust gets built, not through declarations of success, through transparency, through demonstrated accountability, through giving the world, the allies, the critics, and yes, the American people, the actual evidence they need to evaluate whether this moment is as historic as it is being presented. If the deal is strong, showing it makes it stronger. If the deal is weak, showing it gives the world a chance to demand something better before it hardens into precedent. Either way, the answer is the same. Show it to the world. This is not a partisan point. This is not about whether you supported this administration or opposed it. This is about basic standards for how a democratic government operates in relation to agreements made in the name of its citizens. Those citizens and the allies who depend on American leadership deserve to see what was agreed to, who agreed to it, and what happens if it falls apart. History does not grade on a curve. 40 years from now, when scholars look back at this moment, they will not care about the press conferences. They will not care about the spin. They will look at what the deal actually contained, whether it actually held, whether Iran actually complied with what it agreed to, whether the $300 billion went toward building a country that chose integration over conflict, or whether it went toward funding the next chapter of a regime that never changed its core objectives. We are at an inflection point. That much is true. The question is which direction the road runs from here. And right now, we cannot fully answer that question because we have not been given the full picture. So hold the celebrations, acknowledge the temporary relief, take the cautious hope seriously, because hope is not naivety if it is paired with accountability. But demand the transparency that every deal of this magnitude requires. Demand to see the terms. Demand verification. Demand honesty about what was gained and what was given. Because peace built on a foundation nobody can inspect is not peace. It is a bet. And the stakes of this particular bet are too high for it to be made in the dark. The world deserves better than that. And deep down, even the people selling this deal know it. Show it. Before you go, I want to ask you something different. Not just a like or a subscribe, though those genuinely help this channel reach more people. I want you to leave a comment below with one honest question you think is not being asked about this Iran deal. One thing the media is skipping over. One detail that deserves more attention. Because the best conversations do not happen on cable news. They happen in comment sections like this one, with people who are actually paying attention. Drop your question. Let us talk about it. And if this video gave you something to think about, share it. Because clarity right now is the thing the world needs most.